Alright, so I've only got my hands on Mortal Blitz for the PlayStation VR. And yeah, this is a game that's kind of been on my radar because I'm a huge fan of Time Crisis, and this is pretty much heralded as Time Crisis in VR. But yeah, I'll be the judge of that, and most importantly, is it worth the money? Well, let's find out. Alright, let's start things off with the gameplay. As I've said before, from a distance, people have been labeling this Time Crisis, but in VR. And well, it is pretty much that, but with some different mechanics. For starters, you have the ability to use two guns, akimbo style, from the get-go. Also, you have a gravity ability, very similar to the gravity gun from Half-Life, that you can use with each hand when your gun is unequipped. This can be used to pick up and throw things at your enemies like metal objects or grenades. It can also be used to hold things up as a shield to absorb bullets for you, and used to insta-kill dazed enemies, giving the player a brief moment of bullet time mode, which is pretty cool. Besides all that, the way the character moves is the VR standard teleport mechanic, which personally I am not a fan of, but for those who suffer from severe motion sickness, it is a godsend. Regardless, the game functions as it should, with minor glitches here and there, but overall, it works. Also, it is possible to play the game with just the DualShock, but using the motion controllers is ideal for the full experience. So, the game functions. What about the fun factor? Well, it's pretty much shoot everything in sight until you have to move again and do the same thing. Rinse, repeat. Only a few times was I ever tasked to destroy something that wasn't shooting back at me to progress, as well as told to search a room for something important. But other than those very few times, the game is essentially a shoot fest. Again, as a fan of arcade games, this was just fine, and I got with it pretty quickly. But for the gamer population that's looking for something more substantial, this game will get monotonous really quickly. To add insult to injury, the game is only about an hour long. Granted, yes, it has multiple difficulties and some unlockables to, well, unlock, but if you weren't already sold from your first playthrough, there is little to entice you to pick up your guns again. And yes, the plot itself is very weak, so even that does not hold you over. Other than all that, the graphics are serviceable and resemble something from an arcade machine or early PS3 graphics. The art style is cool, but the stages will begin to look very bland after a while since there's no real variety from the constant corridors and trains you traverse. So the graphics are just okay. But now, let's talk about the audio. And yeah, first up, the soundtrack is cool, but very forgettable. The voice acting is decent, as in I can hear them just fine and their lines aren't too goofy, but honestly, I feel like they could have had the voice actors do a few more takes, because while it isn't terrible, it isn't good. But you know what is terrible? The sound mixing, at least in one notable area. Throughout the hectic game, the sound works just fine, and the 3D audio really helps find enemies when they're nearby if you aren't paying attention to the on-screen instructions. But when you are in the hub area, the sound of very loud, unconvincing footsteps begin to wear on your ears. Seriously, it sounded like the characters were clog dancing while delivering their lines. Sure, this is a nitpick, but I really couldn't stop noticing it, and I really couldn't stop poking fun at it, because it is ridiculous. Regardless, let's get down to the bottom line. So, is this game worthwhile? Well, as a fan of arcade shooters, I can honestly say this is the epitome of what an arcade shooter is like at a real arcade. Fun in quick bursts and pretty enjoyable overall. Even with its aesthetic shortcomings, it's still a solid title. It's action-packed, overwhelming, and easy to pick up and play. For arcade fans, this is a good buy. But for those out there wanting to add to their PSVR library, and isn't a real fan of the genre, well, this game will do little to change your mind. Well, that's the review. And now, let's get down to the most important question. Is it worth the money? And yeah, for 20 bucks retail, no. I cannot in good faith recommend this for 20 bucks. I mean, for 5 bucks, it's definitely worth it. I mean, it is a fun experience. It is short, but it is definitely a fun experience. For 10 bucks, maybe pushing a little, but it's still probably worth it. For 20 bucks, no. That's just a little too steep for my taste. Granted, though, this is only episode 1. As you know, when I beat the game, it said, "Oh, this is only episode 1," and future missions, future episodes will be released. But I don't know if those are going to be free or not. So, if this adds on, the new episodes are going to be like, free DLC and added updates, then it's 100% definitely worth it for 20 bucks. I mean, more content. But by itself, and you have to, maybe, hopefully not, but if they force you to, pay more for the added episodes, yeah. At that point, you may have to wait for a deep, deep sale. But regardless, that's the video. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys later.